is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to 10 Things, presented by our friends at Mission Taco Joint. I'm BJ Kissel. We are joined by a special guest today, and according to the internet, one of the fastest risers in the sports media world. We're talking about our friend, somebody we used to podcast quite a bit together here at KCSN, Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus and the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Trevor, I'm just honored that you still respond to messages and you don't forget us little people as you continue soaring in the NFL sports media world, man.
I appreciate it, BJ. It's always good to be on with you, no matter what show or format we're doing, whether it's reoccurring or whether it's a one-off. Of course not, man. This is a lot of fun for me, and we haven't caught up in a while, so this is going to be a good time. It's going to be fun to kind of preview the league, and obviously we got a Chiefs three-peat to talk about here, and some of the teams that might be getting in the way of that. So I'm excited to talk some ball with you.
I'm excited to talk to you as well, and I appreciate everybody who's listening and being into a lot of camp updates with a lot of the other content that we're doing here at KCSN. So we're going to mix it up a little bit. You're so good at covering the entire NFL, and obviously just joke with you, give you a hard time. But in all seriousness, we talked about this offline a little bit, but man, it is cool to watch your ascent, and not just because of your talent, but just because you're a genuinely good dude in this business. There are a lot of great people, but when you watch people that are finding success, that have done it the right way, treat people the right way, always respectful and always cool to everybody in this business, you don't find that all that often, and it makes it so much more just rewarding for us to sit back and just kind of cheer people on that know how hard it is to find success in this business. And so when you see people doing it the right way, it's awesome to see, man. So it's the nicest thing I'm ever going to say about you.
I appreciate it, man. It means a lot. I know that took a lot for you to say, but honestly, man, I'm very lucky to get to do what I do. I'm very lucky with who I get to do it with. And I really just try to every day take that to heart in kind of, like you said, how you're treating the people around you, whether they're coworkers or not, and just like everything that comes with covering this business. You know, you never know what's going to happen every single day. That's why the NFL is the greatest reality TV show there is. And so you got to think on your feet a lot. And obviously, if you treat people the right way, I think life tends to work out for you pretty well. So just always trying to make sure that I'm worthy of the blessing of the platform that I have.
Awesome. Well, from our perspective, you definitely are, and we're proud to see everything you've accomplished. So let's talk a little 10 things today on KCSN, and it's going to be 10 things about the AFC. There are a lot of the great thing about this time of year, and you talk about the NFL being the greatest reality show, and the reason why is that this time of year, everybody's got hope. Every team in the NFL, every fan has convinced themselves that the draft picks they nailed, the second-year players are going to make that jump. Everyone's going to stay healthy, and they're going to get there. And we know the reality of that's not true, but every year there are a few teams that kind of sneak up and take that next step in competing. And it sounds so arrogant as a Chiefs fan, but who's going to compete and who's going to dethrone the Chiefs after the 2 straight Super Bowls? And you could kind of talk like that now, and it's not too far out there. But a couple of the teams that I want to talk about first, and I want to get your thoughts on. The first one, it's the Chiefs home opener Thursday night, Baltimore. Obviously bringing in Derrick Henry. And a lot of talk about that. What Lamar Jackson, at what point is he going to keep making that step, or is he continue being the superstar quarterback that we've seen? But for you, what does Baltimore need to do, or what do you think is that next step they need to make to seriously contend and be a legitimate threat to knocking off the Chiefs in this three-peat in the AFC?
Yeah, obviously a really strong team last year. Lamar winning his second MVP. I think certainly like a Lamar continuing to play at a high level is something that they need, right? I mean, and you don't want to sit here and say like, oh, MVP level is the bar for a player. I mean, that's unrealistic. But the fact of the matter is that you're not arrogant at all when you say that like you're going to have to go through Kansas City at some point. Like somebody's going to have to beat Mahomes and the Chiefs. And so Lamar's got to continue to play at a big level. Getting Derrick Henry, I think, is huge for them. That only really helps their ground game get even more versatile. Look, it's year 3. Like I'm kind of joking when I say this, but kind of not. Like it's year 3 of Rashad Bateman's about to become a superstar, like in training camp. And like I love Rashad Bateman, so I would love to see it happen. But I mean, I think if last year's playoff loss for Baltimore to Kansas City taught anybody anything, it was like Zay Flowers can't do it alone, right? I mean, like there's got to be somebody else out there. And that's beyond even the tight end room. Like somebody else has to show up at the wide receiver room. They've got to continue to score points because you're not going to be able to lean on Zay Flowers every single game. Like, it's got to be somebody a little bit different. That's just how the NFL is. So the offense got to continue to evolve, although I thought they played really great with Todd Monken as their offense coordinator. He is still there. The big question mark for me with Baltimore and what they need to do to sort of get over the hump is, can you be a little bit more consistent on offense? Yes, but that defense, really good last year. I mean, Mike Macdonald, when he was their defensive coordinator, which now he is head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, when he was their defensive coordinator last year, he had Kyle Hamilton, their safety, playing in a defensive player of the year type of role. I mean, Kyle Hamilton was unbelievable. Are they going to be able to deploy him in similar, like, creative, impactful ways? They bring back and they sign Justin Madubuike, which I think was huge for them, but they lose Jadeveon Clowney. They were able to get a ton out of Jadeveon Clowney last year. They need one of those guys, Odafe Owe, David Ojabo, somebody to step up, obviously Kyle Van Noy, to continue to have that top-tier defensive production. So Zach Orr's now the defensive coordinator there. Thankfully for them, some familiarity should be there because he was the linebackers coach for them last year. So it's not like it's like a totally new defense coordinator. I think that was really important for them to continue that momentum into this season to maybe get over the hump to take down the Chiefs. But to me, it simply is, can the defense in Baltimore stay at a really high level like we saw with them last year, even without Mike Macdonald? And can the offense get somebody else? You need like one. That's it. You only really need one. You've got Mark Andrews. You hope he's healthy the whole year. Derrick Henry helps you out a lot. Lamar is Lamar. You have Isaiah Likely as the depth. Zay Flowers is going to be a good receiver. Can you get one other receiver to be somewhat consistent for you? And if they do that, obviously they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those points. And the part of this, and it's easy as a Chiefs fan to say, like, well, we won, so obviously we're so much further ahead. It's not really the case. I mean, it was a 17-10 game. Baltimore's 13-4, and if L'Jarius Sneed doesn't make a crazy play knocking the ball to Zay Flowers, and it's a different game. And so the margin of error being so small is that Baltimore wasn't that far off, and a lot of these teams in the AFC weren't that far off. But talking about that margin of error, what does that margin look like with Mike Macdonald no longer there and having a new defensive coordinator? And those are the things that we're excited to see. When the schedule came out, I was hoping it was Houston. I wanted that to be the NFL opening game because that's a team that I think is really going to be exciting to watch. It ended up later in the season in December for the Chiefs. But getting the season started with Baltimore is a great way for the entire NFL to kind of open up. And then Baltimore is going to see the banner drop at Arrowhead. And so, it's going to get them a little extra fired up. But let's move on to the next team, the AFC. And it's easy with this one because it's the next game on the Chiefs schedule this season, but it's Cincinnati. It's the Joe Burrow, Eminem lookalike, all the content. Like, there's nothing that says there's not enough to talk about than the number of posts that I saw about a guy getting a haircut and bleaching his hair blonde, which he has done throughout it. Like, it's not the first time I've seen him look like this. Trevor, what are we doing here? What are we doing here with this? I don't know.
Joe Burrow is like, he's always a headline guy, no matter what. And it feels like that's been the way that, it's been his story since he was winning the Heisman Trophy at LSU for that incredible season. Like, he's always just everything that Joe Burrow does, it feels like he's in the limelight no matter what. But yeah, I mean, Cincinnati is an interesting team because I think, this has been a team that has been the Chiefs' quote unquote kryptonite, if you want to call it that, over the last 3 years. They've been one of the very few teams to be able to go toe to toe with Cincinnati, whether with Kansas City, whether it's been in the postseason or the regular season. I still remember I was in Cincinnati for that incredible back and forth Chiefs Bengals regular season game near the end of the season a couple of years ago, and I was just like, holy cow, this is crazy. Like, these teams are unbelievable, and it's the kind of game that you want to see that matchup every single year, whether it's in the regular season or in the postseason or maybe both. So, a fully healthy Joe Burrow, that's really it. And I mean, like, it's kind of as simple as that. Now, for Cincinnati, they don't have Brian Callahan as their offensive coordinator anymore. Now, Zach Taylor, he's still an offensive-minded head coach, so a lot of things runs through him anyway. So I don't think there's going to be a huge change there. Their defense coordinator, Lou Anarumo, is still there. He's been there for a couple of years. He understands things for sure. And we should look at that.
Coach soon.
I mean, I'd feel like he's needed to be a head coach for a while, but hey, Cincinnati keeps getting lucky and he keeps coming back. So, when you look at the offense, I think when you look into the future for the Bengals, T. Higgins' future is uncertain there with them. I think that some people are sort of like writing off him being on the team just because he doesn't have that long-term deal. People think that he's probably going to be somewhere else. And I think a lot of people are forgetting, no. This year is still supposed to be a fully healthy Joe Burrow, a motivated Jamar Chase, a motivated T. Higgins, you would think. And then also they draft Jermaine Burton, who I think was an absolute steal for them if he can stay on the field and be the player that we saw him make flashes when he was out at Alabama. The question mark to me is, can the running game still be good enough for this passing game to be as potent as it wants to be? No Joe Mixon on the team anymore. They bring in Zach Moss. They've got Chase Brown. It's going to be a little bit of a running back by committee. Can they continue to be efficient on the ground like they have been over the last couple of years? Because if they're not, that affects what you can do in the passing game, and we'll see how that kind of comes to fruition there for them. So Cincinnati, again, the recipe to be able to go punch for punch with Cincinnati or with Kansas City. That's the second time I've done that, so hopefully when we get off of Cincinnati, I won't have to do that anymore. But look, the rest of the defense is going to be good. Anarumo is one of the best defense coordinators in the game. I think Cincinnati's a legit contender, but to me, it all depends on. I got no worries about Joe Burrow. I got no worries about the offensive weapons. I think the offensive line is going to be even better this year. It's just, is the running game going to be as efficient with Joe Mixon no longer there? That's the big question.
Yeah, and I think we talk about this in San Francisco, maybe in a similar boat. And I think every team you could probably make the case for the contenders at some level. But one thing with Cincinnati is this the last year that they're going to have both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase? Now Jamar Chase coming out, getting $1 million contract this year. I think he's getting like $4.8 million overall. He wants a new contract. He deserves a new contract. This is a perfect time where I would completely understand for a player to hold out the situation that Jamar Chase is in. But can they reinvent themselves after this year and show that through cycles? And it's one thing that, as a Chiefs fan, the thing that we're probably most proud of is we've seen the team, especially the offense, reinvent itself throughout Patrick Mahomes' time, where they went from high flying, scoring all the points all the time, to then having to win in different ways. And now it almost seems like they have some of the weapons to get back to some of the high scoring, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, some of those field stretchers this year. That you look at teams like Cincinnati and you wonder, is this the last chance they have with this before Joe Burrow has to reinvent himself in the running game and whoever they end up paying and how that works out with their 2-star receivers. But speaking of teams that are kind of having to not reinvent themselves, but keep the level, and they could do it because they have who I believe is the second best player in the NFL. That's the Buffalo Bills. And that's where I want to go with this as to, they lost some guys. They lost the receiver down to Jacksonville, Gabe, and they've lost Mitch Morse. And maybe it's just I'm biased because I love Mitch Morse, but he is a much better player what happens actually on the field than I think a lot of people that step back that only look at skill positions, fantasy football. Mitch Morse is going to be a loss for them. So for you, what does Buffalo need to do to maintain or to put themselves in a position to get past that hump during this window where they still have some dudes?
Yeah, it would be classic NFL if like this was somehow the year that the Bills got past the Chiefs, as if like the other years they wouldn't have been able to, because there's no doubt about it. Like I'm sort of worried about this Buffalo Bills roster. I am, not that I think they're going to be like picking in the top 10 of the NFL draft or anything, but they clearly still want their window to be open. And this feels like, not that it completely closes shut, because anytime you have a talent like Josh Allen playing quarterback for you, you're going to be able to be a good football team. But yeah, I mean, no Stephon Diggs, no Gabe Davis, you mentioned, no Mitch Morris. You go to the other side of the ball, and over the last 2 years, no Tremaine Edmonds, Von Miller. He is still on the team, but he's not the Von Miller that he used to be. So I even kind of like called out a subtraction over the last 2 years. Tre'Davious White is gone. Micah Hyde's gone. Jordan Poyer is gone. They have moved on from a ton of guys who were those core Buffalo Bills players who over the last 3 or 4 years were the makeup of a Sean McDermott defense, and a big reason why once Josh Allen started playing well, they were able to be a major contender. And, you know, the Jets are only going to get better with a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers this year, especially if those offensive tackles for them stay healthy. Miami, we know they're going to score a crap ton of points. And, you know, with Buffalo's defense probably taking a step back, it's only going to get more viable for them to do so when they match up with them twice a year. So Buffalo's kind of tough for me because I still think that Buffalo can be a double-digit win team. You know, I think they can still win 10 games this season, maybe 11 games this season. But it's not the team that I have had. I picked Buffalo to go to the Super Bowl like 2 out of the last 3 years over these last 3 seasons because I thought the team was that good. And obviously they didn't get over the hump. Now Kansas City does, and it's like, sometimes it was a flip of the coin. They're right there. Obviously, the overtime game, like everything. They've been very close. They just couldn't get over the hump. If they were to do so this year with this team, it'd be their biggest accomplishment yet, because this team is less talented than probably each of the ones they've had over the last 3 seasons. So for Buffalo to really get over the hump, a lot of new players on defense have to be able to step up. Like Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver need to continue to be dominant in the middle. Greg Rousseau all of a sudden needs to take a massive step forward, and he's been good, but he needs to basically be like an edge one caliber player. Matt Milano's got to stay healthy for sure. And then in their secondary, it's a lot of new guys in the safety room in particular, like Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp. Like those guys got to somehow fill the shoes of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, one of the best safety duos in the league the last 3 years. It's a tough ask. So, and I'm saying all of that without even talking about the fact that you lost Stephon Diggs and you're trying to replace him with a rookie. So it's going to be like a lot of things have to go well for Buffalo for this to somehow be the year that they get in the way of Kansas City, or that they get over the hump and that they get to the Super Bowl. It's just going to be tougher with this roster, given what they've lost over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'm selfishly excited for the Buffalo game. My son and I started a tradition last year. We're going to go to a new road game. We're going to travel to a Chiefs road game every year. Went to Minnesota last year and got to go to that one. That was a good game. And this year he picked Buffalo, because he was either Buffalo or San Francisco, and he's 9, and I was like, I don't know if I want to take a 9-year-old to the stadium of the team that we've beaten in 2 Super Bowls over the last 3 years. So like, he might learn some words that we probably wouldn't need. He's like, let's go to Buffalo. I want to go see Niagara Falls. I was like, all right. So we're going to Buffalo in November. Excited about that. But
I have a very, can I tell a very quick story, which is like sort of similar to that? So I grew up a Bucks fan. My dad's from New Jersey though. So one of his brothers, he's lived in Philadelphia basically his whole life. So he's diehard Eagles fan. Obviously my dad is a big Bucks fan. The Eagles and the Bucks had these big time rivalries in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Obviously there's a story of when the Bucks finally made it to the Super Bowl. They did so by going into Philadelphia, shutting down the vet. And then obviously Lincoln Financial Field opens up the next year. And I remember we went to go visit them when the Bucks were playing the Eagles up in Philly. And it was like 2000, I think it was like 2005. So it was a couple years removed from, that, sting of loss, but Eagles fans still did not like the Bucks for those reasons. I wore my Bucks jersey. My dad was like, I ain't wearing Bucks gear. It's Philadelphia. Like the grown adults might actually like harass me, but I was like, I'm a kid. I'm wearing my Bucks jersey. I don't know any better. So they're actually like heckling us pretty bad when we were in the stands. And me and my cousin, we go, we get, we're sitting in line later in the game to get some food. And this one Eagles fan behind me is giving me all sorts of crap. He's joking around with me. He's not like crossing the line or anything, but he's giving me all sorts of crap. He's heckling me. Some of the other guys around me are getting involved in it, whatever. We go order our food. And after we order our food, that guy behind me who is heavily heckling us puts his credit card down, pays for all of our food. And he's like, hey, it's all in good fun. Go back to Tampa. Tell them that not every single Philly fan's a miserable asshole. So that's one of my fan stories that I love to tell.
That's a good one. And it kind of sums up how I think most football fans, and like they give a hard time. Most time it's kind of jokey. When we left the Minnesota game, there's only a couple, because it ended and Minnesota thought they had the chance. Chiefs ended up winning at the end. This game that Justin Jefferson ended up leaving early with an injury, and there was a few calls that the home team thought that should have gone their way and didn't. But we were leaving and they were chanting cheaters the whole time. And my son, who I was at 8 at the time, was like, Dad, did we cheat? And I was like, no, it's just something losers say. It's just something losers say. Don't worry about it. He just nods and walks off. And I was like, I feel like that was a good dad moment. But,
that's actually amazing. Did we cheat? No.
Oh man. But yeah, we're looking forward to that.
That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun
this year. Yeah, he's into it, and it's gonna be a good time. So let's do one more, and then we'll take a break. One of the other teams. This is the game that I mentioned earlier. I was hoping would be the NFL opener, because it's a team that I'm bullish on. I think that they're gonna have a great season. If you ask me who I'm most worried about, it's Houston. It's the Houston Texans with what they've been able to do. Any team that's got a young superstar quarterback, especially after just 1 year, where you've got him on a rookie deal for a few years, and then to go out and get some key free agents. And you saw what the Texans did this offseason. I thought they made phenomenal moves. That's the team to me that when the Chiefs play them in December, for December 21st, I believe is that game, that's going to be one that has implications for both teams, I think. And it's a team that you got to watch out for.
I think a lot of people are talking about Houston as if they're going to be one of the Chiefs' biggest adversaries when it comes to this three-peat, and for good reason, right? I mean, they're D'Amico Ryans, I think, has definitely proven himself as an excellent head coach from what we've seen even just last year. Bobby Slowick was great as an offense coordinator in his first year with C.J. Stroud. Both of those coaches obviously back. Stroud, it's his second year in the league, and everything that we saw from him during the regular season was encouraging. And then you listen to the offseason. I mean, you talk about a lot of the content that this guy has been on. I mean, he was on Bleacher Report's draft show, and he was listing off like depth chart players and what teams have done. Like, you can tell he loves football. Like, some guys play football because they're good at it and they get paid a lot of money to do it. Other guys play football because they love football. CJ Stroud seems like he loves football. When you're that talented, that's dangerous for everybody else. You know, Nico Collins, breakout year. You go and get Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell fully healthy is a really, really tough ask for any corner in the league because of how great of body control he has. You bring in a vet like Joe Mixon. I think the defense is going to take another step up as well. This is absolutely a team that everybody in the AFC has to account for. Their rebuild has been unbelievably quick, and simply CJ Stroud continuing to ascend, and then that defense continuing to get better, signing Danielle Hunter, a couple of really great draft picks for them. I think Derek Stingley Jr. takes a step up to true CB1 status this year. It's all there for Houston. I think they can be a top 10 scoring offense in the league, and they're going to be a tough out because of how well D'Amico Ryans coaches the defensive side of the football as well. So it's a match made in heaven with Ryans as that head coach, and then CJ Stroud as that young franchise quarterback. They're going to be tough, man. It's going to be a fun playoff team come this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Stingley, and I looked at some of the other, just the low-key moves that they made at cornerback to sign Jeff Okudah, Desmond King, Lonnie Johnson, who Chiefs fans will know, but then C.J. Henderson. I mean, you go and take these flyers on a lot of young talent. You just need one of those guys to step up and play opposite. I don't know the rest of that roster. They got Steven Nelson down there, Eric Murray, another former Chief, who's down there, another guy with a lot of experience. Start adding dudes like that on the back end of your roster, guys that played a lot of football in the National Football League. Then you might have a young team that's up and coming, but you have it with a core group of veteran players that have been there before, where they're not necessarily going to be intimidated by that moment. And it doesn't seem like CJ Stroud is intimidated by anything last year. And so I'm excited for that game in December with the Chiefs, but Houston is definitely one of those teams that we're going to keep an eye on. And we're going to get to a few of those other teams in the AFC here with Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema right after this quick break.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
You know when you discover a new binge-worthy show or a song that you bump on repeat and you have to share it with your friends so they can experience just how awesome it is? That's kind of what it feels like when you discover Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. That's such an awesome deal. There's no way you can keep it to yourself. Friends don't let friends overpay for wireless. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan and switch to Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you and your squad with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSN10. That's mintmobile.com/KCSN10. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSN10. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right, welcome back to 10 Things here on KCSN, talking with PFF's Trevor Sikkema, also the host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Trevor, we've gone through the Ravens, we've gone through the Bengals, we've gone through the Bills, and we've gone through the Texans. The next one that we haven't talked about yet, and talking about the AFC, another team that the Chiefs faced in the playoffs, and one of the coldest games in NFL history, is the Miami Dolphins, the ones that have not yet signed, at least at the time of the recording of this podcast, have not signed their quarterback to an extension, which seems to be one of the big storylines coming out of Miami. But Trevor, for you, when you look at this Dolphins team going into this season as a team that is going to try and make a legitimate threat to the AFC and to the Chiefs, What do you need to see from them? What are the storylines that you need to see play out for them to get where they want to go?
Health, really. I mean, that's the big thing with Miami. If this team can stay fully healthy for most of the year, and, fully healthy for the entire starters is a tough ask for a game as physical as the game of football is, but just avoiding major injury for these guys is going to be key, because they're getting Jalen Phillips back from a torn ACL. Bradley Chubb's coming back from, is it torn ACL or torn Achilles? I can't remember. Maybe I might be flip-flopping those, but season-ending injuries from both of those guys as their starting edge rushers. They signed Shaq Barrett, but Shaq Barrett recently retired, so he's not going to be there to be that depth piece for them. On paper, though, it's hard to really fight against this team. I mean, especially you look at the defensive side of the ball, if you are plugging in Jalen Phillips at some point and Bradley Chubb at some point, I mean, you got David Long Jr., who I think was an underrated signing for them. Good Jordan Brooks as well on the interior. You have Calais Campbell, which I think has gone under the radar as a signing as well. You draft Chop Robinson to be a speed rusher for you as a depth player. But then you go to their secondary, man. Kendall Fuller, Jalen Ramsey, Kader Kohu, Jordan Poyer, Javon Holland. Like, that's Marcus May. That's a sick secondary. It really is. So the defense on paper is there to be really good. Certainly good enough to supplement what should be another top 5, top 10 at the least scoring unit in the league that has Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Odell Beckham Jr., and just a lot of speed out of the backfield as well with Jalen Wright, Raheem Mostert, and Devon A-Chain. So to me, for Miami, if they're fully healthy, they can beat anybody in the NFL. They beat anybody in the NFL. And I think certainly them playing a home game in Miami in January would be nice for them. We'll see how many regular season wins that they can rack up, but I don't really think Tua is this like MVP caliber quarterback. I know he grades very, very well in our system. What he is asked to do in Mike McDaniel's system, it allows him to have really high PFF grades, and he gets the ball where he needs to some really great playmakers. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But when it comes to like, what are the expectations of Tua? I think some people are going to be like, can he take that step to the next level? Maybe. I think Tua kind of just like is what he is. Not that he can't play better, but he's not all of a sudden like going to turn into Josh Allen, or he's not like all of a sudden like going to turn into Joe Burrow. I don't think that's in the tank, but to me, it doesn't necessarily have to be, because the team is that good around him. This is one of my favorite rosters in the league. They lost a little bit in the interior trenches, losing Robert Hunt and then losing Christian Wilkins as well. They'll have to kind of mitigate that a little bit, but I do think as long as they're healthy, Miami's a team that could beat anybody in the NFL.
And they have Chiefs fan favorite Jody Fortson signed with them this offseason, named off a whole bunch of weapons, and see what Jody Fortson does. But I'll mention it to Chiefs fans because he was a fan favorite during his time here. Signed Jonnu Smith too as another tight end this offseason. Guy's got some experience. Let's stay in the AFC East as you move on to number 6 here, and it's a team that everybody loves to talk about. It was supposed to be really exciting last year, and then 3 snaps in, they basically became irrelevant. Talking about the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers, ayahuasca, trips to Egypt. There's all kinds of things going on with the Jets. When you look at the Jets, all the headlines and all the non-real things withstanding, as a football team with this roster, where do you see the Jets, and what do you see from a team that has obviously very high expectations, knowing that Aaron Rodgers is only going to be a few-year rental at the end of his career?
Yeah, I think this is a playoff team. Absolutely. I think that the floor for this team should be at least the divisional round. And that's kind of unfair of any team to say, wow, you should make it to the divisional round, but that's kind of where the New York Jets have placed themselves. I really like this team on paper. I think the biggest question mark is obviously Aaron Rodgers being healthy, but I'm not anywhere close to predicting that he would miss a bunch of time again, even with as old as he is. Like, that Achilles injury is just such a fluke injury that was obviously sucked to watch, because it would have made the Jets a lot of fun to watch last year. But, if he's fully healthy, I think it just comes down to their offensive tackles. Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith, those are 2 guys who are really good in this league, veteran presence, know how to play the game really well. If they're fully healthy, I think this Jets offense can be great, even with some question marks at their skill position spots. I think Garrett Wilson can absolutely carry this passing attack. Mike Williams, when he is fully healthy, I think could be a good wide receiver 2 for them. Malachi Corley could develop into something second half of the season, even if he is just a yards after catch kind of a guy. And I think Breece Hall is one of the top 5 running backs in the NFL. So anytime you have that to lean on, it's really great. I think the defense is going to be totally fine. This is the best defense in football last year. they need to figure it out with Hassan Reddick, because right now Hassan Reddick is holding out, and he was supposed to replace Bryce Huff, who I thought was a major player for them over the last 2 years as a pass rush specialist. They kind of need him to keep that depth of their defensive line the way that they like to play it, with as deep of a rotation as they have. So the rest of the units, Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley, one of the best linebacker duos in the league, maybe have the best secondary in the NFL. So I think the rest of it is fine. It's just a matter of, can the guys on offense stay healthy, particularly offensive tackles? And if they do, then of course you've got the ingredients for what could be a recipe that leads to a deep playoff run.
I could be wrong here. It's my personal opinion. I just feel like the NFL season will be more fun if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and the Jets are in the mix.
Sure.
Just because from the headlines to you never know what he's going to say to the relationship that he's got with Coach Saleh, there's a lot there that I just kind of want to see how this plays out, and I want to experience that as a football fan of what it would look like. And as a fantasy owner for Garrett Wilson, that was horrendous last year and what happened. So for Garrett Wilson and for football watching people's sake, hopefully they're in the mix there as you get into the holiday months. But all right, let's move on to the next one. Interesting team. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, but the Cleveland Browns, with where they're at right now, not going to be at the same level, at least in my opinion, as some of the other teams that we just got done talking about, but another team that's got enough high-end talent around it and some pieces that, depending upon quarterback, depending upon what Deshaun Watson is, could they come out and be a sneaky, decent, competitive team that if they put all the things together, are going to be super surprised at the end? No, but just one of those above average teams that you don't expect a lot from. At least that's my view. What do you look at when you see Cleveland?
This is one of the best defenses in the league on paper. You got a defensive player of the year candidate every single year in Myles Garrett, who'd be a one-game wrecker. One of the best offensive lines in the NFL. It simply comes down to this. If Deshaun Watson plays like Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, this team's sick. Like, this team could maybe beat anybody. But we haven't seen Houston Deshaun Watson in what? 3 years? 4 years now? It's hard to believe that, okay, that version of him is going to come back. And I would tell you that this feels like the last year, right? This feels like the last year where if he's nothing close to what we saw in Houston, I wouldn't bet on him ever getting close to that again, because everything is kind of there for him. Now, look, could the wide receiver room be better? Sure. Nick Chubb coming back from a gruesome injury, I don't know what the status of Nick Chubb is going to be, but at the end of the day, you gave Deshaun Watson the deal that you did to make up for all of that, right?
And they give to Jerry Jeudy.
Right. You didn't give Deshaun Watson all of this money to be like, we still got to improve the receivers and we got to improve. Of course, it's a team game. I get it. But you give him this money because you think that he can make up for non-ideal circumstance. And he absolutely has not to this point when he has been in a Cleveland Browns uniform. So this is a fantastic roster on paper. And I think Cleveland has been a fantastic roster on paper for the last 2 to 3 years. It simply comes down to Deshaun. And I'm kind of oversimplifying it. And a lot of people go like, oh, of course, it comes down to the quarterback. But for Cleveland specifically, it is. If Deshaun plays anything like he did when he was with the Houston Texans, this team, again, has the talent level to kind of hang with anybody. And if Deshaun doesn't take that next step, well, then this team's probably going to win 10 games. They might get a wild card spot, and they're going to be a non-factor when it comes to the divisional round or the AFC Championship.
Yeah. The stuff you mentioned about their offensive line, knowing that Amari Cooper is a guy, they still have him, that if Jerry Jeudy can show to be a competent number 2, Nick Chubb's health, and then Zadarius Smith signing this offseason to be opposite Myles Garrett, it's a good move for this. There are pieces there, to your point, that if we see any level of Deshaun Watson that we've seen in the past, it's going to be a team that shouldn't surprise you when they're competing in which should be a very fun AFC North to watch this season. One of the other teams I want to talk about in the AFC as we move on here, it's very interesting because it's all dependent upon the quarterback in a different kind of way. But the Colts, Anthony Richardson, and a young, talented quarterback, that Chris Ballard has done everything to try to surround that team, especially the defensive line. We know he's always going to start in the trenches. He's talked about it throughout his entire career, going back to his time in Kansas City. But this could be a big year for Chris Ballard Obviously, Anthony Richardson needs to stay healthy, but what does a healthy Anthony Richardson look like with the Colts and what they could be this year?
So I don't really know what the ceiling of Richardson is for this upcoming year, because I always figured that it would be an adjustment for him, not just going to the NFL, but just growing as a quarterback, because I graduated from the University of Florida, so I watched every snap that Anthony Richardson took. I mean, before that 1 year that Anthony Richardson was a starter, I watched him as a backup, and I was like, he's very clearly the best quarterback on this team. Why isn't he playing more? And Dan Mullen just didn't want to do that, and I can understand. It's because he would have had to live with a lot more young, inexperienced quarterback lumps and mistakes and things like that, but I thought it would have been worth it, man. So he only has 1 year as a full-time starter while he's at Florida. He's still kind of trying to figure it out there. And even last year, you watch him in the first couple of weeks with Steichen before he got hurt. I was very encouraged by how Shane Steichen was sort of simplifying things for Richardson, identifying what he does really well, and then also mitigating some of his weaknesses. Like when I watched Richardson's first couple of games last year, I saw a lot of single read passing concepts, right? Where you're basically only reading half the field. Like it's a sail concept, it's a smash concept, like it's something like that where you're basically saying, hey, this defender's in conflict. You don't really have to worry about anything else that's going on in the field. This defender's in conflict. If he comes up, throw it over his head. If he stays deep, throw it underneath. And that's kind of like how there were a lot of plays like that just made it very simple, that built up his confidence. It allowed him to see the field a little bit better. I was hoping that would take more steps into more like advanced reading of the field and getting to different progressions and backside reads and things like that. But it really didn't, because he was hurt. The offensive line played better last year than it had the previous couple of years, which is good. Because I was a little worried there, because it felt like Indy was like entrenched with their offensive line, like no matter what. And then they started playing bad. You go, oh no, they can't really get out of a lot of these contracts. So they started to play better. You add A.D. Mitchell into a wide receiver room that now has Josh Downs, who I like a lot, Michael Pittman Jr. You still have Alec Pierce. You got Jonathan Taylor to run the ball. I think the offense could be very fun, but I don't think like Anthony Richardson's going to like turn into Josh Allen next year. I think it's still, we're a year away from him really taking that leap. So I think this will be a fun team. It'll be a team where, maybe a couple of weeks a year, Richardson plays one of those crazy Superman type of games and he's able to play spoiler. But I don't know if they're going to be able to put it together to be a legitimate contender this upcoming year. I feel like that might be 2025.
Yeah, what you described is probably a very infuriating season to watch for Colts fans, because you're going to see flashes. And like you said, you could see a couple of games where he just goes off, in the games where it's not there. That whatever game plan they had, whatever issues whatever tendencies, whatever it was that they were studying going into that game, get ripped apart. And they just fall flat in those games. But let's move on. One more team in the AFC, then I want to give a surprise team. So we've gone through basically half the teams in the AFC at this point.
Right, you're right.
But one of the ones that we haven't is the Pittsburgh Steelers. We joked about before recording that when I looked at the count, I had to like double take when I looked at the standings. The Steelers were 10-7 last year, and it's just another reminder that Mike Tomlin is a much better coach than he'll ever get credit for. He's going to be a Hall of Fame coach. But obviously Russell Wilson being the big move, Justin Fields, and that competition. But how do you see this Steelers season? Obviously, the quarterback's going to be a huge part of this, but are the Steelers good enough to compete? Can they jump up and surprise somebody?
I don't think so. When it comes to like top tier competition, I just don't think they're going to have the quarterback play, right? I have a difficult time not only believing that Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields can take them to that elevated level, but it's also the fact that like I'm a little skeptical of Arthur Smith at this point too, for how it felt like he sort of mismanaged some of the guys when he was in Atlanta. Now, to be fair to Arthur Smith, he was dealing with like Marcus Mariota first, and then it was Taylor Heineke, and then it was Desmond Ridder. So it's like he didn't necessarily have the best quarterbacks to operate the offense. So maybe he was a little bit stubborn in how he wanted the offense to be with those guys. I'm not sure, but I'm more skeptical of the Steelers. Mike Tomlin's going to find a way to get around 500 because he has every single year. He's never finished with a record below 500 as a head coach, which is insane.
That's crazy.
But I can't see this offense being explosive enough to make any sort of a deep playoff. Like, they might make a wild card, but if they make a wild card, whoever they play as the 2 seed, I think they're going to kick the crap out of them, right? So I think that's kind of where I'm at with Pittsburgh. They're not going to be terrible because they're never terrible under Tomlin, but I just don't see them as a real threat the way that they're currently constructed.
All right, we'll be right back after this. We're going to see who I should have brought up. Is it the Chargers, it's the Raiders, the Broncos, the Jaguars we haven't talked about? We'll get to those teams. We'll see who's surprise team for Trevor that we haven't talked about yet right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Welcome back to 10 Things here on KCSN. BJ Kissel hanging out with Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema. Trevor, we've gone through, I think, a little bit more than half of the AFC at this point. What team have we not yet talked about that you think, if the stars aligned, if people stayed healthy and guys developed, should be a team that could be competing at the end, or at least threatening teams as we get closer to the playoffs?
So are we only talking AFC teams, or are we talking any team?
We're staying AFC this time.
Okay. All right. So I would say the only other team that I think has a legitimate shot would be Jacksonville, right? If they take that next step, if Trevor Lawrence continues to ascend, you bring in Gabe Davis, you bring in Brian Thomas Jr., you continue to be the vertical passing offense that you were last year because they took a big step in that direction. Trevor Etienne continues to play well. If that defense takes another step, if Trayvon Walker continues to play well, Josh Hines Allen, continues to play at a very high level. I think the linebackers, Chad Muma, Devin Lloyd, if they take a next step, there's certainly reason to believe that some of the young guns on Jacksonville's roster, if they take a step up, then this is a legitimate playoff year for them. Because it feels like there have been times in the past where it's like, all right, well, Jacksonville's kind of this playoff team. And even that one year they made the playoffs, it was like, all right, cool, Jacksonville made the playoffs. Were they really a deep threat team? No, probably not. This year they might be a little bit more legitimate in that category. So I think Jacksonville would be the last serious team that could be a postseason contender. Now, I will say this. Jim Harbaugh is a damn fine football coach, right? Wins everywhere. Won at Stanford, won with the 49ers, and I'm not saying championship, but basically brought Stanford to its peak as a program, it felt like, or at least over the last couple of decades. Brought San Francisco to a Super Bowl in an instant classic Super Bowl. Obviously built Michigan up to be a national championship contender. I think he's going to be great with the Chargers. Now, I don't think the roster is good enough for them to be a legit postseason team this year. Maybe they sneak into as a wild card. What a year that would be if they're able to do it. But I still think they're a year at least away from being a legitimate contender. However, I think Harbaugh could play spoiler. That's a team that the Chiefs, to the spirit of kind of this exercise, have to watch out for, because you play this team twice a year. And you can look at the roster and you go, should be 2 wins. It's Jim Harbaugh, though. I mean, he's going to give you the best game plan. It's Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter. So it's they're going to give you the best game plan they possibly can. They might throw some things actually that you weren't even expecting. I think that chess match between Harbaugh and Andy Reid is going to be an excellent one this year and any years that follow. So that's a team that could be a spoiler team.
It's just going to be weird. I feel like the Chargers, they missed their window by about 3 years. They had Harbaugh 3 years ago with the talent and the roster they had, and everybody was healthy. It's different. As a Chiefs fan, it's just going to feel different, knowing that the Chargers, it's not Austin Eckler, it's not Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Mike Williams, there was a stretch there where as a Chiefs fan, Mike Williams had some of his best games of his career against the Chiefs, where I was convinced that Mike Williams is a top 5 receiver in the National Football League. I wanted the Chiefs to sign him this offseason, and I think it's just because every good game he had seemed to be against Kansas City, and then Keenan Allen just doing what he did. But I do want to get your thoughts on the Chiefs. What do you want to see from this group, or what do you think you need to see from this group to get to where they are? I mean, obviously where they are, but what are you most intrigued to see, I guess, with the Chiefs in this version of the team going in to try and get this three-peat?
Yeah, I think you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Let's open it up a little bit. Let's light up the scoreboard a little bit closer to what we were a couple of years ago. And I think they've got the talent to be able to do it, right? I mean, they've got the wide receivers. You bring in Hollywood Brown, you draft Xavier Worthy. Obviously, Travis Kelce is still doing what he's doing. You got a good run game now. I think The interior offensive line is one of the best, if not the best in the NFL. Yeah, you got to question the left tackle, but I think that's something that you can figure out, and they'll figure out here over the next month. I think they've at least got the playmakers this year to put more points on the board even than they did last year. So I think that there is, as weird as it is to say, like they're going for a three-peat, this could be one of the best offenses they've had during this three-peat run, with a lot of guys that they still have on the roster. I got full faith in Steve Spagnuolo and what he's going to do on the defensive side of the ball. I know you're kind of figuring things out. Will the L'Jarius Sneed gone? All right, yeah. Trent McDuffie kind of slides into a lot of those responsibilities himself, but who's playing a lot in that CB2 role? Is it going to be a little bit of a rotating thing? Is it going to change every single week? Figuring that out. Justin Reed's injury. What are you going to do with the three safety rotation that they like to do? Is Jaden Hicks a legitimate player, the rookie that they had there? So how you're making up for Willie Gay not being on the team anymore? Those are some questions that I have. But again, Steve Spagnuolo has earned every benefit of the doubt in the world to be able to say, yeah, he's going to figure that part out. I just look at that offense and say, this can be an even more potent offense for the Chiefs this year than it was last year when they won the Super Bowl. And I think that's scary for anybody to admit.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that it's Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and then Jared Wiley is the one, at least through camp so far. I was clamoring for a backup tight end to Kelsey for 4 years that they never drafted one, and they went out and drafted a guy, and he's made some plays so far. Granted, they haven't put the pads on yet. That actually starts on Friday as we record, this show on Thursday. But defensively for the Chiefs, I think you brought up a great point that L'Jarius Sneed, I think everybody knew how good he was, but kind of overlooking that you went from having your top corner travel with the top receiver and basically shut him down in every single game. It was a nice thing to have as a defensive coordinator where you just put somebody out, but it's the second, third year guys that you want to see. Can George Karlaftis become more of a household name? He's become a very solid player. But you mentioned a couple of moves that the Chiefs have made, obviously Chris Jones being what he is, but the Chiefs re-signing Mike Dana along the defensive line, as versatile as he is, may have been one of the best moves for the entire team of a team going for a three-peat, and that they needed help on the interior. You don't know about Charles Omenihu coming back from his injury, when that's going to happen, what that's going to look like. And for Mike Dana, who is worth more than the 3 years, $18 million or whatever it is that he got, that was a huge signing for the Chiefs. So excited to see what that looks like. But that's why we get to watch it all play out. And regardless of what Chiefs fans feel, obviously won back-to-back, but margin of error being what it is in the NFL, they were never absolutely dominating everyone. And so it'll be fun to see him go forward. It's great to see that guys like Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, not that they don't need a reason to get fired up, but you dangle a carrot out there in front of them no one's ever won 3 in a row. And you can separate yourself from New England and all the greatest dynasties in the history of the National Football League and where you want to put yourself by getting somewhere that they've never gone. And at this point in their careers, to be able to dangle something like that in front of them is a pretty powerful thing.
Yep, I agree. It's special. They're going to be obviously going back to back is motivation enough, but going for something that's never been done, not by Joe Montana, not by Tom Brady, not by any of just these greatest players that will get remembered and talked about forever to accomplish something that not even they were able to do. Those are two people who, in Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, who I think and legacy means a lot to them, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not just being good; it's being legendary at this point, and they've got a chance to do it this year. So I think it's going to be incredibly fun to watch because we know the Chiefs are going to be there down the stretch. It's just kind of what form are they in? Are other teams going to be close to their level? And it's going to be the main storyline to watch this season.
I like the way you said it. What form are the Chiefs? We know they're going to be there. They're going to be competitive. But what does this version of the Chiefs look like? Mm-hmm. Excited to see that, man, and excited to have a chance to chat with you again. We'll do it again soon. We appreciate everybody for listening to this episode of 10 Things. Don't forget to leave us that 5-star review. Let us know what you think about the show and what we got going on here at KCSN. We appreciate all your support as per usual. We've got our golf tournament coming up, so make sure you sign up for that. And then if you're listening to this episode and you want to come out to the Royals game on Sunday, we'll have a tailgate out in Lot N with our friends over at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. So appreciate everybody for listening. Trevor, we appreciate you, man. Make sure you check him out at Pro Football Focus and listen with him and Connor Rogers on the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. There's a reason that both you and Connor were listed as rising superstars in this business, and it's awesome to have a chance to know both of you before you continue soaring. It's awesome to see two good people doing great things and soaring. So congrats, man. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see y'all later.